to 2,730 Years and Counting, a podcast that is chronicling the re-emergence of the lost house of Israel and its reconciliation with the house of Judah. Opinions of the interviewer and guests may not be the same, but we are all walking in discovery together. Come listen.
Shepherd of Israel, give ear, O shepherd of Israel. You are the one who feeds us. You are the one who leads us.
It's time for another episode of 2,730 Years and Counting. This time, we're going to have a gentleman that those of you that have listened to previous episodes will remember very well. His name is Alexander Vejich. And he and I got to talking the other day, and we just decided that we need to get caught up because it's been a while since we've done anything, and there's been much that's gone on. And needless to say, he has comments on it, and those are comments that you need to hear and that I need to hear. So here we are today. I'm Gene Porter. This is my two-house podcast. It's called 2,730 Years ... and Counting. And another day, another year, another time, we'll talk about why I use that title. But right now, today, you need to hear a Hebrew tell you about what's going on in the world and how he views it. So with that being said, I'm going to get out of the way. And Alexander, you are welcome to start anytime you feel like it.
Well, greetings, friends around the world. What a lovely opportunity to address you all. Our beloved audience. We know, Gene and I both know very much how much our programs are very popular among you. We get feedback all the time, and the feedbacks from all over the world are very positive. So indeed, people are looking forward every time we come on air that what are we going to say and what we have to say. Well, I want to greet you not only on my behalf, but also on behalf of a newly formed organization, which was formed this year in the beginning months of this Roman pagan year. The organization is called Hope of Israel Worldwide Church of God. That's how we named it. Namely, we had first radio, internet radio, Hope of Israel Worldwide. And then we came to the point where we thought we needed to kind of streamline our efforts in spreading the good news of the restoration of the kingdom of Israel is at the same time the kingdom of God. And then we thought, well, we named ourselves, Hope of Israel. It comes from Jeremiah chapter 17. It says, hope of Israel. It comes from from a certain, it's kind of an exclamation that Jeremiah has. Mikveh Israel, which is translated in our languages in Serbian, English, and so on, as Hope of Israel. But Mikveh, we all know, those who are well acquainted with the Bible symbolism understand that Mikveh was the foundational thing in the, we may call it Hebrew religion or the Bible religion or God's way, however we want to call it anyway. It's certainly not the religion. The true religion in the Bible is not called by any man or woman or event. It's always called Haderech, the way, or it's called, usually it's called the way, and that's the way of living, of course, because what God is interested in his people, he was always interested they would live the right way of life, But his people, of course, being easily seduced by various pompous rites and rituals of other religion. His people always wanted to be something else. They never wanted to be separate and be God's people. They just wanted to be just like everybody else. And of course, then God said, fine, if that's what you want, my dear children, you'll just be scattered to the utmost parts of the world, and you're going to lose your identity. You're going to become pagans, and you want to be pagans, fine, enjoy your paganism until it gets to your head so much, and until you be fed up and sick from it so much that you will stop at one point and think, where did we come from, and why did we come this far, and why is nothing working out in our lives? In many people's lives, things are not working out, friends, because they do not want to pay attention, not only to who they are, but they don't want to pay attention to the one, the Creator who created them, indeed. And so with Hope of Israel Worldwide Church of God, we wanted to establish, first of all, a good tradition of that Worldwide Church of God which existed in the last century. The leader of that church, Herbert W. Armstrong, was the person who actually began spreading once again awareness of the 12 tribes, awareness of the 10 tribes of Israel and the house of Judah. He began, in his college that he founded, the history of the tribes of Israel were extensively studied. And I've got all these materials from that time. And much of that I've used in our interviews. So I'm so proud to say that I've restored in many ways the awareness of the house of Israel. And at the same time, we wanted to just name organization that will have the core biblical doctrine right there in front. The hope of Israel, Mikveh Yisrael, as Jeremiah put it. Mikveh, Mikveh is Mikvehs is the precursor of what Christianity calls baptism, of what Messianics call immersion, but that's what it is. You remember in mikvahs were the way how people ritually get purified in the Old Testament. And that's exactly why Jeremiah said, Mikveh Yisrael, the hope of Israel. It's the hope of all the nations, because as we know, the Apostle Paul tells us a great mystery in Romans 11. And he says, I'm telling you a mystery. All the nations in the world will be grafted to Israel, to that, how do you call it, olive, you have the wild and the other one, olive. To that olive that is not wild, all these wild olives will be grafted to the real one, and then all the nations will become Israelites, and they will be saved. That's a beautiful picture. It's a marvelous plan, the most amazing plan that only a supernatural being could have devised. And therefore it was my idea, yes, and I'm an initiator of that. They did the Hope of Israel. And then as we had the radio, the Hope of Israel Worldwide, and somebody remembered that we used to have Worldwide Church of God, which basically advocated many of the things that we do, and advocated Hope of Israel, advocated the identity of Israel. Because you have to understand, friends, British Israelitism, as they call it, was very popular back in the 18th and 19th century, not only in the Anglo-Saxon world, but also among the Scandinavians, partly among the Benelux countries of the Benelux, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. And then sometimes around the First World War, all of a sudden, that kind of movement awareness kind of died, and especially after the Second World War. But then sometimes at the time when Hitler rose to power back in Germany in 1933, sometimes around then, all of a sudden, there was a voice from America who said, there is a core doctrine in the Bible, and you cannot understand the Bible unless you understand the identity of Israel. And that's exactly what we understand. We are very grateful for that beautiful understanding that comes from the eternal. And we named ourselves Hope of Israel, Worldwide Church of God, in honor to all those who have given much of their time and efforts to trace down the tribes of Israel. And we have traced them down very well. You understand that many Israelites basically gathered in Northwest Europe, on the British Isles, and also in the United States of America. However, there are many of those other individuals who are of the tribes who got lost around the world, and
Yes.
just basically have been assimilated by the various nations, just as it was prophesied. The prophecy that God gave about his people was that they will lose their identity, they will be assimilated into pagan nations, and they would exactly forget who they are. But here we are again, and we are here to indeed remind them who they are. Our internet radio, Hope of Israel Worldwide, keeps preaching Bible doctrines 24 hours, 7 days a week. Thankfully, it's internet. Thankfully, it's in our hands. So
Yes.
nobody can stop it. You see, friends, because it is prophesied in the Bible that there will be satanic forces that will be trying to exterminate all the awareness of Israel, to exterminate all the true Torah teachings, just like they tried to exterminate the Jewish people in the Second World War. And therefore, we were thinking, what shall we do? And then we said, well, if we have a server in our hands, they can do nothing. It's far away from Europe, because Europe is a beast. It's the bestial continent. It has always been the bestial continent, friends, and don't have any illusions about Europe. Europe has a long history, yes, indeed. Europe is an interesting continent, but European mindset, frame of mind of Europeans is bestial, friends. Has always been bestial. That's why your ancestors fled to the New World. That's why many of you are born now in Australia, in New Zealand, in America, even on the British Isles, because your ancestors fled from bestial Europe. Europe was always having a bestial religion, so-called Christianity, actually Roman Catholicism, which is called Babylon in the Bible. And it's called Babylon because it does practice all the Babylonian doctrines that were practiced by Nimrodian Babylon back in those days. And we have Nimrod in the book of Genesis chapter 10. He is described as the first dictator of the world. And in any case, now we have, not only do we now have Hope of Israel Worldwide Church of God, but we do have Hope of Israel Worldwide Radio that will be constantly keeps broadcasting truth to all the world in English language. We are working to have it, hopefully. We have some Spanish materials. We'll hopefully have some in French and so on. But in any case, what we have done, and I'm so proud to announce to all of you, what we Israelites have done in the last several months is to start our own radio. And plus, of course, on that radio, what do we broadcast? Well, we broadcast these programs. So if you want to hear me and Jean again, well, Hope of Israel Worldwide, there it is. And you will just hear us. You'll just hear us there often, very often. Our programs are very often reproduced there because they're just gems. That's what people believe. And so those are the achievements I'm very proud of. Those are the achievements I hope to further. And in the last several months, perhaps another good news. Some of you do know that there is a deep corruption in one continent called Africa, where we have false Christians. I'll call them that way because I don't know how else I can call them. False Christians who pretend they are just Torah observant, they are this, that, and the other. But all that they're just doing is just basically milking Western nations of money, and Western churches of money, and American churches of God of money, just for their own benefits. And some of us had that very unpleasant experience to discover very deep corruption. I've been contacted now by an organization the other day. It's an organization that wants to kind of somehow filter through all those organizations and see who is real there in Africa and who is not. And we provided some information for them. And also, I'm very proud to tell you that as far as Hope of Israel is concerned, we are well recognized by one African government. It's a government of a very small, beautiful nation of Malawi. And the greatest certificate, if you want, or the greatest recognition we could all was that the government of Malawi registered us on the 9th of May of this year with a observation: these people from the Hope of Israel, these people are true Christians. I could not really get any better. I mean, true Christians in a sense of our example, in a sense of how we conduct ourselves, in a sense that when they had recently one of those natural disasters, one of those tornadoes, so they always have those silly names, and I always remember, I always forget what name it was there, but it was a tornado that hit Malawi, and even though we were not very numerous there, we, led by the government, we just provided relief as quickly as we could. And the government of Malawi is very happy with us being there, so they granted us the recognition as soon as we asked to be recognized as a registered organization. And they told us, you are real Christians. Because the government of Malawi, they do have all kinds of nominal Christians there, from Catholics to Protestants and so on. And they've granted us this wonderful recognition. And there is nothing for true Christians. I mean, true Christians who really follow the Messiah. I think there is no greater recognition than to be labeled as true followers of their Messiah. And so we are very honored by that, and hopefully we'll continue to spread the good, solid Bible-based knowledge of the Torah observant, Christians, and the true identity of our Messiah, who is not against the Torah. On the contrary, he said he came to confirm the law. He lived it to give us an example how to live it. And we continue to march forward. These are things you did not know in the last few months, but now, since you do, now you do know them, and now you can pray for our further success and for us to endure to the end. Because we have to endure so many things. There are people who hate us, especially those who are corrupted in Africa. Some of them vowed to destroy hope of Israel and so on. Of course, we are not afraid of that. We know that if we are not of God, nothing will work. Whatever is of God will survive. But in any case, we have now forces in the world against the Torah, against the true God's way of life, against the Bible. After all, you see there are people talking about banning the Bible or removing the Bible from their libraries, because there's so many, horrible things in the Bible, they say, and so on, because they misunderstand the word of God anyway. And, there's this movement now of how can we call it? Anti-way, anti-God, anti-Bible, anti-everything that has anything to do with biblical morality. So we have to endure, and it's not very easy. At times, we all get discouraged, of course, but then we remember that the sufferings of the present age are nothing compared to the glory that God has designed for Israel, the house of Israel, and for all of us within the house of Israel, and then we continue marching. But brethren, things are moving forward. There are things happening they're very encouraging indeed. So be encouraged. I have a friend from Croatia. He's he has no Jewish origin, but he's a kind of a messianic Jewish has got Messianic Jewish inclination anyway. And he went recently to Sweden. Let me give you just one example of how things sometimes work out. He fell in love with a Swedish girl, and he went to Sweden, and now he's been in Sweden for several months. And then occasionally he would just write to me how things are in Sweden, and he admires how they've got certain regulations in their society. Of course, I'm not surprised, because if you know anything about Sweden, the Swedish people are descendants of the house of Israel, right? They're descendants of the tribe of Naphtali,
right?
And anyway, and then he just writes me, he would just say how hunting is not really permitted. You can hunt perhaps a limited amount of prey, and you can hunt. It's all very controlled. There is a control in society how much Swedish people love recreation and sports and all of that. And then all of a sudden he says, because we communicated quite extensively, and he does know what we believe, and he says, look at the emblem of the ancient Swedish kings. He sends me the emblem, the coat of arms. The coat of arms. And you know what is on the coat of arms? Gene, do you know this? It's a doe.
I bet.
It's a doe.
Oh, really? Okay, right. It's a doe.
Remember what it says for the Naphtali?
Yes,
one of
that's right.
Yeah, the
Yes.
Genesis 49 and the blessing of their father Jacob.
Yes.
Left lies like a doe. And there it
Yep.
is, doe. And I've got it. I've got those coat of arms, and I quickly shared it with all my friends, and I think I shared it on Facebook as well. Doe, friends, another proof of where the Israelites are. You
Yes.
cannot hide. You cannot
It,
hide. And you cannot tell me, oh, they just disappeared. Oh, really? So somebody poured out a vanish and they just vanished away as if they've never existed. Yeah, sure. Swedish people are descendants of Naphtali, and I've known that for decades now. But my friend Broko Jadrijevic, who is now there from Croatia, sent me that coat of arms. And of course, he sent it to me because he knew what I would say. I said, do you think this is? Oh no, he says, I know what it is. I remember. And so we have a doe, and then he says that the Jewish star, so-called Jewish star, or the Star of David, is very present everywhere in Sweden. And listen to this one. This is interesting. The 7 cases menorah, which is, as we know today, it's the greatest symbol of the Jewish people. Some kind of menorah is like a very popular item among the Swedish people. Something like a decoration around the house. So many Swedes have got those things, and they've got menorahs as a decoration. And he writes to me, Borko writes to me and says, "What do you think? Where did they get it from?" Well, I said, he said, of course they had to get it from Israel and from Jerusalem. They couldn't have gotten it from Rome. Of course not. He also tells me that they were very much anti-Catholic. That they would say that's very interesting because they would. He says, as he communicates with them, and in some when it comes to certain rites or rituals, whatever, they would just say, oh, it's Roman Catholic. They would just dismiss it as something irrelevant. So they're very much anti-Catholic. As you probably know, basically all the Scandinavian nations have turned into some kind of Protestant kind of religion.
Right.
But this, as we know, Protestants have joined Catholics now in the ecumenical effort to unify all so-called Christian world. So therefore, but it's interesting that with the Swedish people, they still have this awareness of being much different in their tradition from Roman Catholics. That's very interesting. So I've learned about Sweden some things, and then I say to him, look, I said, do you think we can do a favor to Swedish people? I said, can we just write like leaflets, articles in Swedish about the origin of Swedish people? And we can perhaps, update them on some other things, like who is Constantine the Great, the father of the modern Christianity, so-called Christianity. Because I'm still writing my Facebook, not my Facebook, my little booklet on Constantine the Great, and I'm a bit stuck because I've got so much work. We had to organize this Hope of Israel, Plus, I'm having how can I call it? The blitzkrieg of cat fleas, because the cat fleas somewhere were hiding, and all of a sudden, I have a whole explosion of cat fleas all over the place. So I'm fighting that as well. And Constantine is there. Constantine is there waiting for. The core of the work is done. I just want to add a few more details there. And so on. I'm just amazed, and this is probably the case or reality for other nations as well. It's just amazing how much people don't know about that man. All that people know about Constantine the Great. I'm speaking now about the Serbian historians. Oh, Constantine the Great and his Edict of Milan, and he allowed tolerance for Christians, and he gave them freedom and all that. Okay, that's what most historians believe. Now, of course, the Serbian nation, as usually, they would just go a bit further than that. So because he gave us, freedom and tolerance, let's just deify him and make him a saint, So that's what the Serbian people have done with Constantine the Great. And the 3rd of June is the date when they celebrate him as a saint. Now, there's nothing saintly about Constantine anyway. But anyway, that's Serbian people are just perfect to take something negative and then perfect it. You know what I mean? Take something and then make a perfection in doing whatever. A few months ago, we had for the first time we had a shooting in public. A young lad, age 14, came into his school and shot several of his schoolmates and history teacher. That was the first time something happened for the first time in Serbia. A day or two later, another young lad took a gun and just went around and shot several people in several villages. Those things they're perhaps common in America and elsewhere, but not in Serbia. And my first comment was that we are getting what we have sown for a long time. For a long time, this society in which we live and societies around the world have been sowing violence. Violence and violence, homemade violence, school violence, everywhere violence, and then now it's exploded. Interesting enough, the at that time Minister of Education said, "Oh, here we've got America now. Here now." I said, "You silly one, just you better resign," which he did. He resigned later, a few days later. But they blame America. It's amazing how people blame somebody else, not themselves. They blame. So America was blamed for blamed for setting example for these people. Well, that's silly, because the only thing that we have from America here are those violent video games that the government of Serbia allows to be downloaded from internet. So what is America guilty of that anyway? But anyway, the society was up in here. What happened? What's happening to us? Where are we going to? What's going on with us? Well, that's what we're going with, as I said. Of all the voices in this nation, I was the only one who said, people, we need to repent and return to God. And nobody else did. There were all kinds of experts parading on TV, trying to comfort nation, explain why this happened, all this and the other. In the meantime, I'm thinking how hypocritical you are. We have all known that there are bullies in schools. We have, several years ago, or several decades ago, everybody tolerated violence, in homes, in marriages, because the husband was supposed to be, a man, you know what I mean?
Right.
He was supposed to be a man and whatever. And we all, we have grown up with all of that rubbish. And then, here are these video games being available to all the world, not only to Americans. And so I thought it was so hypocritical, but it once again, the human nature comes to mind. Human nature always blames somebody else. It's not to me, it's Americans. Oh, it's not us, it's somebody. No, of course it's us. So I was the only one who raised a voice in this nation and told them it's our sins. And I said, look, lest we repent. Lest we repent nationally, it's going to get worse. We're going to see this happening again and again. And I'm the only one who keeps calling people to repentance in this nation. And I might be a few voices in the world calling you once again, all of you people around the world, to repent if you want to see anything better in this short life that we still have to live. And if you want to have eternal life, we have to repent from all these wrong ways. There is no other way. You have to repent because God created us and gave us an instruction book called the Bible, how to live. He didn't give us the Bible to twist it, kick it, and stuff. Oh, yes. And during the day of Pentecost, Gene, we had, that's another piece of historical information. We don't know how many people here in our part of Europe kept Pentecost or kept we know that the Bogomils from this area did keep the Ten Commandments. We know that. We don't know if they kept the feasts of Jehovah, the feasts of the Lord. But in any case, during the Pentecost, I had a message, and I used one of your favorite lines to take a Bible and just rip off the Old Testament because it's unimportant. We don't need it, so let's just rip it off and burn it up if we could, because we are New Testament Christians supposedly. And of course, and I said, try to do it. And I said, try to subtract all the, try to delete all the quotes from the Old Testament in the New, and you'll see what remains of the New Testament. A bunch of stupidities that you do not understand.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, yes.
It's mostly commentary on the old. That's right.
Yes, exactly.
That's really what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, usually sometimes it's commentary on those verses of the Old Testament explaining what the reality is.
Exactly. And that's, like you said, that's why, and I wish more people would realize this, that's why Yeshua came. He came to be our exemplar.
Exactly.
He came to live the life that we're supposed to live.
Exactly. He didn't come to what? Nail to the cross the law of God.
And he didn't come to be worshipped either. He didn't come to be worshipped, And
he always said, don't pray to me, pray to the Father in heaven. Don't, look into the Father who sent me, just, you see me, you see the Father. The Father is the point, not I. But of course, people.
Exactly.
All right. What I said back in Pentecost and in several of my messages in Serbian. Well, this Christianity has made God what's the diagnosis in medicine? A double person, or I can't remember. But he's like a schizophrenic, He gives a moral law, which gives us life to one group of people, the Old Testament Israelites, and then he comes in the New Testament, a totally new, different God who says, no, you don't need that law. It's a curse. It's a terrible. It's schizophrenic, isn't it? So this Christianity has created God, a schizophrenic God. And we have all of these schizophrenic, maniacal stupidities that modern Christianity has done to God and to people of God, which is Israel, that no wonder that many young people just reject religion altogether. They want to read it. Of course they don't. Right. Who in the world wants to serve a schizophrenic God? I mean, as a phenomenon of today, is that this modern Christianity created God or turned God into a schizophrenic who gives a set of laws, to one group of people at one point of time, and then a few centuries later he comes and says, oh no, this law you don't need, this is a curse, this is bad, this is really, you're free now, and I'm giving you a Messiah who has just freed you from all this law. Well, it says in Psalms that the law converts the soul. So friends, friends, without the law of God.
The implication is that he didn't do it right the first time.
Right.
That's the craziness of it. I'm sorry, but he's perfect.
How can a perfect God not do things right now? Oh, come on.
Right.
Please.
Exactly.
And how can his spittled image, his reflection, Jesus Christ, how could he, a perfect reflection of him, of God the Father, how could he in the world ever abolish the law that is basically the dynamic force in relations between the two, in that family relationship anyway. And after all, without the law, what kind of family relationship we would have one with another? And after the law, how will we know how to serve God, the true God of Israel? Friends, just please disconnect from all of this stupidity and all this morbidity of the modern Christianity. Friends, if you have something in you telling you there is wrong, it is wrong. If you have something in you telling you your identity is not what you think it is, you were born with. I'm not talking about transgenderism and all that rubbish. I'm just talking about your spiritual identity. Yes, friends, if you realize you're different and there is a reason for that, there must be a reason. Perhaps it's called from the eternal for you to return to who you are. And many of you are Israelites, friends, even by the flesh. But, many of us who are not, perhaps many of those who are not Israelites directly, well, they become Israelites the moment they turn to the God of Israel. And the moment they become true followers of Yeshua, the true followers of Jesus Christ, they become, Abraham's seed, Abraham's children. And he's the father of all the faithful. So here we are. And it's time to finally wake up to our identity and realize why all these years many of you feel you're so different. You don't fit into the culture. You don't fit into the national this, that, and the other. Well, you don't, because you are somebody else. because you might be Israelites indeed. And it is very interesting what we are finding in these last days. In these last days, we have found all of a sudden you see something new, a new something found in cosmos, in space. What was it? It was I can't remember what it was, but something else. There is something. Then we have the proton neutrons. Well, another spectacle was found as well, smaller than proton, I think. And then you have excavation. I don't know. All of a sudden, found a coin from the time of King David. Then all of a sudden, found what was found. Something else in Egypt was found. The something with to do with their pharaohs. All the time we have new knowledge popping up. The prophet Daniel says that knowledge will increase. Knowledge keeps increasing all the time.
And isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that as the end approaches, the amount of knowledge being discovered keeps getting stronger and faster and stronger
and faster. We're just amazed. Almost every day there is a piece of news telling us that something was discovered, something was understood, something was excavated, something was popped out of nowhere. Friends, it's all true. But you know what is the most important knowledge among all those things? Is the knowledge of who you are. There is nothing more important in your life than to know who you are. When you know who you are, then you know where you fit. Then you know who your God is. Then you know who is your national identity and your primarily your national history. It's all written in the scriptures, friends. And it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing, all this track. And the other day, Jean and I were talking about something that happens now in Asia. I have a friend, Margot Crossing from Australia. Yes. She's a lady that is involved very heavily into discovering and studying all the various coincidences between Israelites, ancient Israelites, and the modern various tribes of Asia. You would be absolutely blown apart to hear that.
That's right. That's a fact.
Blown apart. And one tribe, for example, just to give an example, there's a tribe of Karen tribe from Burma or Myanmar. They're refugees, most of them. Many of them are now refugees because of the bloody civil war in Burma or Myanmar. Yes. But nevertheless, that Karen tribe, Margot and others have got so many similarities to lost Israelites, and they're not the only ones. You would be absolutely flabbergasted, blown apart, friends, to know that we don't even know how many people in Asia claim to be related to the house of Israel. I'll speak about, we wanted to talk to you about Japan, because you'll be absolutely now flabbergasted and blown apart to hear what is there in Japan. But before that, let me just tell you that there is in the state of Manipur, which is the northeast state in India, mostly populated by the yellow race people, and Hinduism is not the main religion. The main religion is the nominal Christianity. 60% of Manipur population are Baptists, and there are others. However, in that state, there is a small population of followers of Jesus Christ. But nevertheless, they're well respected. In fact, when I was in Manipur, how many now? It's now 2-3 years ago. I visited a group of those people there, lovely people, where I ordained a deacon and deaconess. Interesting enough, the deacon was something what would be a minister. He would be the vice minister of how do you call it, capital investments, I think you would call it in your society. And the lady, his wife, she became minister of education. That's how much trust those people enjoyed, because of their way of life and because of being honest people of integrity. At the same time, I'm aware that in that very state of Manipur, there is a group of people who believe that they are descendants of the tribe of Manasseh. Now, interesting enough, just like we, from the 10 tribes, just like we have been discovering and getting aware of our identities. There is a non-government organization in Israel headed by a man called Michael Freund. And what his goal is, and the goal of his organization is called, by the way, Shavei Israel. Interesting, isn't it? Shavei Israel, and Shavei Israel is involved in discovering crypto Jews. Those would be the descendants of those Jews who had to convert to Catholicism in order to save their lives. And many of them come from Portugal and Spain. Yes. Many of them also emigrated, from Portugal and Spain into South America. And you've got all colonies of them in Colombia, in El Salvador, and et cetera, et cetera. Some of them also live even in Italy, and some of them live even in Poland. And this Shavei Israel brings monthly update on all of their activities and various things. Michael Freund has given himself a task to teach those people about the Jewish observances and so on, so that they can return to their true identity. Well, that's exactly what Gene and our program is doing. We are counting to the restoration of the kingdom of Israel, which is at the same time the kingdom of God, and we're trying to restore you to the way,
to your heritage,
exactly, to who you are, friends. With all this knowledge in the world, yes, it's very important and relevant, but nothing is more important to you personally, to each one of you, than to know who you are and why are you here and what is your destiny after all. But the destiny is beautiful, the future glory of the house of Israel. Prophesied among all the Hebrew prophets. Oh my. How many of those things you know? But many of you have related those things wrongly only to the Jewish people. The Jewish people are part of the, house of Israel. And you see, even the Jewish people do have their non-government organization that takes care of that, of discovering them and bringing them back to their heritage. Interesting enough, Michael Freund and I became good friends because he found me on Facebook. That's how But I remember, some time ago, there was an article in Jerusalem Post, and the article was about current Serbian problems with the southern province of Kosovo and so on. And the article was so well written, as if it was written by a Serbian, by somebody who really understands and knows all the ins and outs of all that problem. But I noticed the name. The name was a Jewish name, and it was said that this article was published in Jerusalem Post. Sometime in 2010. And a couple of years later, 2012, I get friend request from a person called Michael Freund, and he says to me in a comment, he says, "I admire your work." And I thought, who in the world is this interesting person? And I was like, why is this name ringing the bell? I've never met, anybody. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, oh, come on. Isn't this a man? Because I realized that when I checked out his biography, Jerusalem Post, I said, oh, there it is. I said, this must be a man who wrote that excellent article about Serbia, very affirmative about Serbia, which is very unusual, as you know, because Serbia is usually maligned by all the world for I don't know what reason. In any case, and I write back to him. He says he admired my work, and I was like, oh, I was so honored. I said, I was thinking, where in the world did he learn about my work? But that's still a mystery. And I write back to him, and we become good friends over internet. So every time that the Serbian press brings and translates something about him from his articles, I usually spread it all over the place so the whole nation can see it. And it happened, you see, and I don't think this is by a chance. I think Eternal always has his ways. It just happened that a man who is basically trying to wake up the lost Jews to their identity becomes my close friend, my good friend. And I wish when we were in Jerusalem back in 2017, Eugene, I wish I met him, but there was no time. We were very busy with other things. Yeah, and nevertheless, we become good friends. But you see, the same process, friends, is going on in the Jewish world. In fact, they've got so now with these people from Manipur who claim to be descendants of Manasseh, he has been bringing them in waves to the state of Israel, and basically, what's the word? Well, they have a ministry of adoption or whatever, so they're just being adopted into
immigration. Yeah.
Immigration, yes.
Yeah.
These people from India are now being adopted and taken in to the state of Israel. They've got their settlements now. They just live like Jews, and so you see the parallel process is going on with the House of Judah. The House of Judah is doing its part to retrieve, we might say, lost Jews. Gene and I and the Hope of Israel, we do our best to retrieve Israelites all over the place,
right.
Make them aware of their identity and tell them, look, you can live still as Israelites. You can be blessed as Israelites. No matter what you are, where were you born, who are your parents, or ancestors, there might be, there's Israel all over the place. So you're Israelites, why don't you return to your God for your own benefits? And
well,
so
isn't it, I don't know how you felt as you were growing up. I know when I was growing up, and I thought of myself as a Christian, and I thought of myself, I realized, hold it a second, I'm reading Scripture. I'm reading the Bible. The Bible is all about Israel. It's not about who I think I am. I mean, I don't see how I fit. So, in other words, am I supposed to just stand on the sideline and read about these people and not be part of it? Because why would we be wasting our time reading about somebody else when I want to find out about my life and what I'm supposed to do?
Oh, yeah.
And boy, the day that I came to the realization that I was an Israelite,
right,
that was a watershed day in my life.
Well, in my case, it's a bit different. You see, I grew up as an atheist.
Okay.
Because we were in atheist communist country anyway. Bible was not very available. Well, it was there, but it wasn't really something to be read. But nevertheless, once I came to the age of about 20 and began reading the Bible, at first I didn't realize that it was talking only about one nation. But over the time, of course, I realized that. And then I heard this funny conclusion, really. Oh, there is a spiritual Israel. I'm thinking, what in the world? I don't find that in the Bible at all. Spiritual Israel, okay, but yeah, I do. I can understand. The context. You may not have any biological connection to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So once I can understand that connection, but still, it doesn't make much sense, right? Because it's all a different. I'm like, wait a second. What does it mean, spiritual Israel? So sometimes back in 2009, I think I began. Yes, I was into the book of Hosea, and I was studying the book of Hosea, and then it just dawned on me: look, you've been Israelite all this time. You've been Israelite all these years. You've been Israelite, and you didn't get it. This book speaks about you. And you cannot really separate the Bible and Bible knowledge from this key knowledge of who you are. And I was thinking, I said to God then, okay, I said, everywhere I go, I'll just spread this news about Israel. And I do. And now this year we've come to the point that me and my friends, several of my friends, we just, as we had to think about who we are and what we do, what we'll do next and what to do next, we came to realization, well, come on, it's hope of Israel, mikveh Israel, as Jeremiah says. And then later he says, all those who are not, who reject you, the spring of the living water, all their names will be written on the earth. Very interesting, because remember that incident in the gospel when he was writing, Yeshua was writing something on the ground, and all of these others just who came to accuse Mary Magdalene, one by one they left.
Right.
So it's interesting. Right. I keep thinking about it often. So all those, so those of us who accept the God of Israel, then it means we will not. Our names are not written on the earth, but as it says there in Revelation. There is a book of life, so their names are written in heaven, and all those who reject the source of the true living water, their names are written on the ground. It says in Jeremiah. So that's the Mikveh Israel, the hope of Israel. That's the difference between us, who are true Israelites, observant Israelites, living the way of life, living Chaderek, and the rest who just don't care and just have some other, as it says, broken cisterns, And look at the world, Gene. Isn't it broken? Of course it's broken. Why is the world broken? Why are your family's friends broken? Why are the nations broken? Because they drink from the broken cisterns. It's not the God of Israel. As simple as that. Look at this horrible war in Ukraine. I mean, it's now has now spilled over in the second year. I'm like, oh my. We just have, lest all of you know, but we just have here, we had the inflation between 20 and 42%. Would you believe that? The food prices skyrocketed. The fuel prices skyrocketed. The government has to decide every Friday. The government comes up with the prices of gas. What will be the prices, various prices of gas? It's absolutely crazy. I mean, the prices have just gone. And it's just amazing. Stupid war. And I was thinking, why don't they just attack Kiev and the rest Zelensky and just finish up with all of this, because every time you think about any conflict or anything else, just go to the beginning. Remember how the Apostle John always tells us in the New Testament, go to the beginning, in the beginning, in the beginning, in the beginning, in the beginning, And then, even Yeshua said, in the beginning it wasn't so, but because of hardness of their heart, this is. So in the beginning, what was in the beginning? Of course, in the beginning it was the ethnic Russians who were oppressed in Ukraine, living in areas that used to be Russia, by the way, but the communists, for some reason, in Soviet Union gave those areas over to Ukraine, like Crimea and Peninsula and so on. And then the oppression of the Russians, and then there was the Russian government discovers that there was a plan by the Ukrainian regime to make a storm and basically expel all the Russians from Ukraine. So, this war began, and I hoped, it would be ended by the winter, but no, I was wrong, of course. I was wrong as always. We always want all those wars to be short. I was wrong as always, because when Serbia was bombed back in 1999, we thought, several days and it'll be over. No, it lasted for 3 months. And then, this horrible war just is now spilling over in the second year. And the worst of all is when you think about it. Come on, how come some of these Western leaders like European Union and Americans don't get one thing with Russians? Russians are called bears. When you wake up the bear, you know what happens? The bear is not going to lose. Russians are people who just do not accept defeat. I don't know how to illustrate that to American mind and any other mind. Russians just don't accept to be defeated. In the Second World War, their women would just go and bomb the Germans on the lines. They would just mobilize the whole society, against the horrible, hated Germans, Nazi Germans, of course. That's how Russians are. Russians do not accept defeat. So, these Western people are just sacrificing Ukraine and Ukrainians, for their own. Well, wait a second. What do you want? You beleaguered Russia with NATO members. You beleaguered Russia, so they lied to Russia anyway. They said that they would never expand NATO close to Russia, but they lied. So they lied. Then the Ukrainian regime wanted to commit genocide, you might say. Then all of a sudden this war starts, and this stupid Western governments just keep basically sacrificing Ukrainians because they've proclaimed Russia their greatest enemy. You dumb people! Your greatest enemy is right there in the middle of Europe, developing its own military. Have you seen how much Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor, has now cut from the German budget for the military? It's never high. It's the highest budget giving, for military development ever in German history. Wow. And nobody even pays attention. Silly you Western Israelites. And of course his might is not going to be against Russia. The Germans are kind of what Germans are just letting. They have always been doing that. Oh, they have always done it. But Americans never realized that. They always put America to be clown and do dirty work for them. And they're just observant. So they just want peace for everyone. Now Germans, oh no, they just observed all this. Oh, what a horrible sad situation. But what can you do? Well, what can you do? They just always put Americans to do dirty work, and Americans always come out as clowns and hated by nations, and Americans always just get away. Germans always get away, and well, it's Americans. We're American allies. What could we do? Poor us. Poor us. France, they're developing their GPS. France, they're developing their space program. France, they've got highest budget giving for their military ever. And you're going to see the mighty European army very soon. Very soon you're going to see it, because sadly the blind French nation, Reubenites, the descendants of Reuben, are so blind because they hate England and English predominance and Anglo-Saxon predominance, because France had the first world empire was French, by the way, those of you who don't know the history. And then, of course, English Commonwealth replaced them. So France has always felt this kind of inferiority complex, but now they've got a big brother called Germans, whom they embraced, and along with them, France has been advocating European army. Well, who do you think that European army is going to attack? Who? Russia? No, you're wrong. They're going to attack Russia just later. They're going to. You're the main enemy of all the Germans have always been Israelites. To ancient Assyrians, it was Israelites. To these modern Assyrians, because that's who they are, Germans, the modern Israelites. And who are the modern Israelites? Well, you Anglo-Saxon nations, you silly doves, an unturned cake, as the book of Hosea describes you. The foreigners eating your power, and you just allow it. When I was in Australia several months ago, people just told me, they're just the foreigners. Australian government allows foreigners to come in. The Australian farmers are being destroyed. And now the Australian government wants to give even the voting power to those foreigners. Stupid! How stupid can you be? Look at Paris. Look at Paris, the capital of France. Once a pride of all the nations, Paris, a city of love and stuff. You should see how dirty and backward it is now, because it's full of those so-called immigrants. It's full of those immigrants who have destroyed it. Paris is not what it used to be. It used to be one of the most loved tourist destination. Now, at least when I talk to various Serbians, they just say, "Oh, don't Paris, just avoid it." It's nothing like what it used to be. It's dirty and backward and dangerous and horrible. I said, "What?"
That sounds like America.
Exactly.
Sounds like San Francisco.
Sounds like San Francisco and probably some other places there.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Oh, yeah.
And you're supposed to be the greatest Christian nation in the world. That's what you believe. Yes. Shooting almost every day. We have shooting on the streets, the crimes, the crime rate. You call yourselves Christians, Americans. Look at the crime rate in your country. Exceeds everybody else's crime rate. Horrible.
Right.
You're being on decline all the time, and the worst and the pinnacle of your decline will be to lose just what it happened in the Old Testament. You will lose your own country, and you're going to be captive, and you're going to be serving foreign gods and foreign nations whom you did not know. Of course you did not know. Yes, you knew French and Germans, but you never knew about the European nation and European Union. Here it is. And it's building its own army. You silly people. Who do you think that army is going to attack? And what do you think that army is going to be busy doing, in few years down the road? It's going to be keeping the concentration camps for you dumb people. You're just obsessed with your how do you call those detention centers that Americans are so obsessed with? I can't remember you're obsessed with your domestic whatever supposed. No, you'll be dragged away from your country. You'll be dragged away to other places, and you'll be slaves in other nations. What was the name of those? I'm trying to remember.
Are you talking about concentration camps?
Yes. They think about those buildings that military will supposedly Pentagon will use for its citizens. But no, you're wrong. You're terribly wrong, people. You're wrong because the Bible says something else. But people don't want to listen to the Bible. The Bible is like a quaint ancient book that nobody cares about. Really? Well, you'll be caring about it a few years down the road when you find yourselves in various foreign places.
Yeah, fulfilling
and somebody, hopefully those two witnesses will tell you about Leviticus 19, the pivotal prophecy that will just exactly outlines all that you'll be experiencing in those foreign nations. Terrible.
Yes.
We already had several broadcasts, so I'm not going to elaborate on that. Gene and I have given you enough warning, and perhaps it's never enough, but we have given you enough warning you can always refer to and hear, and hopefully some of you wake up even now. Many of you will wake up, sadly, when it'll be much different. Many of you will wake up, but keep in mind it's still not too late. It's never too late to return to your God. Your God keeps waiting for you with open arms. Your God has been dying to see you. Your God is the one from the story of the prodigal son. Here's the father on the road waiting, to lift up your garments and run was an extreme shame in the Jewish culture, by the way. And that's exactly what you read in that story. He just runs to the son who is lost. Oh, lost Israelites. How much you're just lost in your wrong ways. And you wonder why nothing is working out in our lives. Well, because you're ignoring the most important knowledge you must have in your life. And the most important knowledge is who you are. That's how we always remember, how we always finish and close with these programs, to remember who you are. Remember who you are, because that's the most important knowledge that may mean perhaps even life and death. I don't know. It might. It may not. But it's important. What else could be more important than who you are? Your identity, Well, what else? The other day, I just found somebody's profile was saying, I'm a Hebrew, I'm Israelite. I was like, wow, this is beautiful. So I just shared it right away. And I just added, and I'm not ashamed of it. Why should I be ashamed of being a Hebrew and Israelite? Why? You tell me why. You tell me, why should I be ashamed of that? Well, what shall I be? What should I be proud of? Of all the paganism of the world? Well, today is one of the greatest pagan holiday in my nation. Now, sadly, on this very day, what the public perhaps should know, is on this very date, which is, this day is devoted to a deity, anyway, Vid, the deity that sees, everything becomes clear, and anyway, there is a deity seeing, let's call it that way. But in any case, on this very date, in 1389, there was a huge, giant battle of Kosovo that happened between the Turks and the medieval Serbians. Serbia was basically divided into small counties, and then all of those various local how can we call them, big heads decided to kind of somehow collect their peasants together, and they just went to resist the Ottoman Empire army. Just imagine the Ottoman Empire. I mean, imagine an empire with an army like that. And the Ottoman Empire really didn't want to take Serbia, but he wanted to go to Austro-Hungarians. He wanted to go to Vienna and take Vienna and basically, conquer Europe. That was their goal. But of course, Serbian pride, what else? Serbian pride was there. How could we allow conquerors of any sort to pass through our country without any resistance, Oh, we have to resist. Right. So, of course, they just all got together. Of course, they were a much smaller army than what the Ottoman Empire was. And nevertheless, in this heroic battle, nobody knows who really won. Actually, the Ottomans won. But nevertheless, the Ottomans were stopped on their march to Vienna. They were stopped for about several months after that battle before they reorganized and stuff. And those few months proved to be crucial for the Austrians and other Europeans. So they also reorganized and prepared for the battle much better. And that's when when the Ottomans finally reached Vienna, they lost. But nevertheless, this Battle of Kosovo is now raised to mythological levels in Serbian nation, and there is nothing I don't think there is nothing. Well, this holiday, as they call it, they celebrated without joy. It's celebrated in sadness, because some would say Serbians won. Obviously not. The Turks say that they won. So in any case, but anyway, the day itself is dedicated to one of the ancient Slavic deities. And what shall I be proud of? Shall I be proud of paganism? Shall I be proud of pagans who sacrifice their children to Moloch and sacrifice it to Baal? Is that what we are supposed to be proud of? And that's sadly what the modern Christianity celebrates, my dear friends. Easter and Christmas. And you all know that, it's well-known fact already. Nobody can now deny it. Everybody knows that Jesus Christ was not born on Christmas. And certainly all of you have heard that Easter, just by the name, Oestre, Ishtar, Easter, you just know by the name, it has nothing to do with Jesus Christ. And when with anything that has any connection with Christianity. And that's what the modern Christianity celebrates. Pure, sheer paganism. On the days on which ancient pagans, sacrificed their children, their firstborn children, to their deities. What about Sunday? Sunday, just the name of it just shows you what it is. Are we supposed to be proud of paganism? Well, if you want to be proud of it, fine, be. I'm not going to be part of that. No, I don't want to be proud of pagan Sunday and pagan Christmas and pagan Easter and all the other paganism that is just interwoven so into this modern Christianity that is just, people just find it so hard to distinguish the truth from the error, because it is amazing the level of deception, the level the level of education that made people incapable of distinguishing the right from wrong, especially when it comes to religious fear. It's absolutely unbelievable what the Church of Rome has done to this world, what the Church of Rome has done to falsify the true Christianity. There's so many things we can talk about, from the fact that Saint Peter is not there in the Vatican. Those are the remains of Simon Magus. To the body of Christ, when these Christians of all sorts take these Eucharist and stuff. Eucharist is just a falsified perversion, if you wish, of true Passover. By the way, speaking of the Passover, Gene, I'm not sure if I told you and our friends, but another achievement we Israelites have done in the last several months is that for the first time in history of Serbia, a booklet on the true Passover emerged in Serbian language.
All right, in the Serbian language.
Yes, in Serbian language.
You were single-handedly bringing Serbia into this understanding.
Of course I am. Well, with the help of few loving friends. We had another miracle that really happened. There was a Serbian guy who contacted me and said, am I allowed to give you any donation? He said, because he said, I realize all that you're doing must cost some money. And he said, I'll just want to give that donation, and you can just use that money as you see fit. Well, wow. I said, it's not. Great. I said, it's not forbidden. And that was the first time in our history that a Serbian person would do that. And the guy, the amount of money that he sent, I fainted his first donation. And ever since later, in all the months that followed, he would send always a certain. He would always send certain amount. So I presume, in fact, he began tithing. Giving tithe, giving the 10th of his. He realized obviously that tithing was very important, and not long after his offer to help and send donation, he was able to secure himself a flat, which is not very easy in Serbia these days. He got his own flat, and he invited me to come. And I asked him, I said, "Do you want me to dedicate it to the God of Israel?" Oh yes, he said. I didn't know it was possible. Well, I said, look, if pagans can dedicate their flats and everything else to their pagan deities, why shouldn't we Israelites do the same? So I did it. We dedicated it to the God of Israel. And then I sat to have a conversation with him. Very, very pleasant fellow he was. And of course, as soon as you find it pleasant, you can kind of sense why that is, because of who he is. And I said, how did you find us? Oh, he said, you know what? He said, I ran across your teachings on, listen to this one, the tribes of Israel, he said. And he said that led me to listen to everything else and to begin reading the Bible.
Wow.
Oh,
see, and look at the blessings that he's experienced.
And look at the blessings. And I said,
yes.
at first I was like, I said, yes. I'm like, oh, finally, it started happening in this country. People are waking up to their identity, you know. But I said to myself, just keep quiet, you silly one. It's God who does it all. So you were just instrument and then nothing else. But
that's
anyway, that's exciting. So he's now keeping the, at first he told me he wasn't sure about keeping the Sabbath and holidays, but then, Sabbath after Sabbath, he's now basically, he is there. So he's making it. I'm not pushing anything. I'm just there to be a helper of the joy and to teach people the right way. And that's it. The rest is up to the people. But anyway, yes, I'm bringing all this knowledge to Serbia. So it was in March, sometime in March. Yes, I think it was March. We had this, we had for the first time in the history of Serbia, for the first time, the first textbook ever on the topic of true Passover appeared. And I'm now working on this topic of, on the topic of Constantine the Great, who was born in Serbia. Just to read to you how blind this world is, I'm keeping here in my hand now the National Review, Serbia National Review. It's a review that brings news from all various parts of Serbia and various tourist destinations and so on. And this is a review from some years back, from 2013, and it was between 1700th anniversary of the Edict of Milan. So the cover page, our friends cannot see it, but I'm going to. The cover page has this statue of Constantine the Great, with his huge eyes. He has a huge eyes like a wild owl, you know. Anyway,
well, didn't he depict himself? Didn't he depict himself as the sun god, basically?
Oh yes, basically yes, because he believed he kept to the end of his life. He kept this pagan title, Pontifex Maximus, which means the head of all the pagans. And yes, he depicted, he identified himself basically like sun god. Yes, but his ugly face just shows something else. But then so this cover says 1,700 years of Edict of Milan. And listen to the title of this article: The Man Who Baptized Europe. Oh my. The Man Who Baptized Europe. That's what it is. In Serbian, of course, in Cyrillic. Friends, the man who baptized Europe, he basically baptized Europe in paganism. And the man who baptized Europe baptized you to sun-worshipping cult. And that sun-worshipping cult of Europe got spread all over the place. All over the world. All over the world. And all of you who are still receiving all of those so-called Christian missionaries, you're just accepting the cult, the sun cult. Friends, please, please wake up, especially if you're Israelites, and many of you are everywhere, whoever you are. Just wake up, and just understand. The whole world lies in error, and the whole world, because of this error, this curse, this Constantine the Great brought, is now upon the whole world, basically. And I had to write first the book on Passover, because he is the one who dared to actually abolish the Passover and institute what the whole world today celebrates as Easter. Horrendous, absolutely horrendous.
Yes.
Absolutely horrendous. Anyway, so after finishing with Constantine, I promised something else to the Serbian audience, and it'll be entitled something like the violent subversion of the Christian day of life, of the Christian day of rest. Sorry, what do you say? Violent subversion of the Christian day of rest. And what is the Christian day of rest? What a good question, friends. What Jesus Christ says in in Mark chapter 2? And I am the Lord of the what? Of Sunday, of Monday, of Tuesday, of Wednesday. No. Wrong. I'm the Lord of the
Shabbat.
Sabbath. Of Shabbat.
Right. Right.
That's the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Hello, hello. Anybody there? Anybody at home? Hello, lost Israelites. That's the Messiah. That's the God. That's the one who followed the Israelites, as it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. That was the rock that followed the Israelites through the wilderness. So hello, hello. The Shabbat covenant. Shabbat covenant is right there in Exodus. Go and look for it. Shabbat was there established between God and his people forever. Forever, for all generations.
Right.
And so the true day of rest is indeed Shabbat. The thing is, from the history we know that for a long time, these churches on the east, all these so-called Orthodox churches on the east, even the ones in the Copts in Egypt, the Ethiopian church, the church in Armenia, Serbia, Georgia, Russia, Greece, Cyprus, they all kept Shabbat. They all kept Shabbat, and they were the last ones that they just sometimes around, I think about, it would be about 4th century, I would think, they just slipped into Sunday. Well, Ethiopian church held out until the 8th century. Did you know? Of course you didn't, but did you know that until the 8th century, the official day of rest of Ethiopia was Shabbat?
Wow.
No, of course, nobody knows that, but the history tells us about that. So, and what we have here in Serbia, the Serbian Orthodox, these Orthodox churches, every Saturday afternoon, they do have a liturgies, you know. And when I kind of inquired a little bit about it, they said, well, that's because just to be reminded that we used to keep Shabbat. Oh, I said. But why did you stop? Oh, well, because they believe that Jesus Christ rose up on Sunday. Oh, he was, you know, he came back to life on Sunday, so that's why he keeps Sunday. Well, that's not true. He came back to life on Shabbat, but that's another topic. But
Yes.
in any case, all these Eastern churches kept Shabbat. And
Exactly.
that means that our ancestors here in Serbia kept Shabbat. That's very interesting. But nevertheless, we have this violent subversion of the Christian day of rest. Christ said he is the Lord of the Shabbat. So Shabbat is the true Christian day of rest. Ha!
Yes.
What a surprise. And now we have to inform the Serbian public, or at least those who are interested, what is the true Christian day of rest. Just like we informed them what happened with the Christ Passover and how it became Easter. Anyway, so yes, I'm doing what I can do in Serbia, not just by myself. Yeah, there are a few other people.
Uh-huh.
There's about 10 of us. 10 of us kind of actively, more or less, who are just there. 5 are immersed and 5 are not. But nevertheless, I'm very happy that they're still faithful and holding out. Serbia has plenty of problems. Very, very unique. Very unique to what you see in the Western world. You know, Serbia has problem with employment. Serbia has problem with the law not being, even the good laws not being really respected in reality. Serbia has problem with private, business owners who just will lay you off if you don't want to work on the Sabbath or on holidays, God's holidays, and so on. So Serbia has various problems. But I said, as now being the presiding elder of the Hope of Israel, I said to all of the believers, whatever happens, whatever sacrifice it will take, we have to make it for one another, and we must ensure that nobody would end up on the street without food, without clothing, without lodging because of his faith or her faith. We must not allow that, and it will be very difficult because, you know, the wages, the income, monthly income in Serbia is terribly low, and our silly government keeps driving us to join European Union, and I'm like, oh no. So I keep warning Serbian people what is European Union, and I'll keep warning them as well. But first I thought, because of these, you know, religion has become very popular with the demise of the communist or socialist regimes. All of a sudden you have everybody rushing to the churches. Everybody's now very religious. You know, they keep the Saints' Day, they keep Sunday, they do this, that, and the other. Oh, fasting is a big thing here, you know, but it's not the fasting, or it's a Lent actually. So it's not fasting in biblical term, but it's a Lent.
Right.
You know, in Serbian Orthodox Church, for example, we've got about 3 or 4 Lents, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yes, I tell you, it's all in Gentile world. It's all very much complicated anyway. While you in America have 1 Lent, here you've got about 2 or 3 or 5 Lents. One is a Christmas Lent, the other one is Easter Lent, and they've got 2 other Lents for whatever thing. Anyhow, so everything is just doubly complicated, and people are just so superstitiously convinced that if they don't do those things, something horrible is going to happen to them. God is going to punish them, because the view of God is He's punishing being with a big rod. So you try to be disobedient and so on. So we're facing not only the economic disaster here in Serbia, we're facing also the incredibly ignorant, superstitious culture, which is equally dangerous. But nevertheless, I'm just so glad that people here, those few who have realized their identity, are holding out and enduring. And I keep that we will continue. But at the same time, I'm so thankful that we started Hope of Israel Radio in Serbian. But because Hope of Israel would not mean anything to Serbian, we just call it biblical history, because every history of Christianity here is totally falsified, just like it is in the Western world. So we still have a radio in Serbian. And speaking of radio, I'm so happy, because statistics show that we have reached various parts with radio, various parts of the world that I don't recall being reached by any other message. Like the other night, there was somebody in the capital of Iceland.
Wow. Reykjavik.
Yeah, somebody in Reykjavik was listening to our Hope of Israel. The other night, one night I was informed quickly. Look, somebody in Tirana has listened to our program.
Wow!
For, I know how many hours. So somebody is the capital of Albania. The other night, it was the capital of Slovenia, Ljubljana. Now we were so proud of that, because for years here, and Ljubljana is kind of within this Balkan sphere, you might say East European. For years, we were hoping that anybody in Ljubljana or in Slovenia would hear the message of the great kingdom, of the kingdom of Israel, and so on. But it never happened until we had radio. Then we were shocked to find the other day there was a little. It's a little village, more or less little village, in one of the Serbian regions. Somebody listened to, a region of Banat, by the way, and somebody listened. I was like, it's absolutely amazing. I've noticed on my YouTube channel, several people from Macedonia came as well. Now, Macedonia is interesting, of course, Now they call it the North Macedonia. That's okay. So people from North Macedonia came. Macedonia is a very interesting region, because it does have the Israelites, the Macedonia, you see. And anyway, so we have been with this radio. Then when you look at the statistics, you wouldn't believe, for about 2 months, Sierra Leone was the top country in Africa that listened to Hope of Israel. You wouldn't believe where the, because it's an internet radio, of course. Right. So we don't depend on various satellites, various governments, various this, that, and the other. Hope of Israel has been now reaching basically the whole world because of internet. That was a genius device, of course. It was my idea, but our friend Randy Fries from Canada, was the one from Saskatchewan who just paid for it and then set it all up. And he just comes out and he just informs us. He just informed us now we have our radio. So Israelites now have our radio, friends. We do have our friends. We have our radio. We have Gene Porter's programs. And that same radio, again, broadcasts our programs as well. All the programs, they found it. They just downloaded it. And then it's being just listed in the regular schedule. So we have our radio. We have our if you want to have, as I said to my friend from Croatia. My friend from Croatia, something else interesting I have to relate to you. This was really epic. He came the other day. He says, "Look, when it comes to our area, to area of former Yugoslavia," he says to me, "You're basically the only one spreading the good news." Well, he said, because he said, I've listened to all of these other various there are various Protestants there, like Adventists and offshoots of Adventists, kind of having their own programs and preachings and stuff. He says, but they always send the bad news. He says, is it really good news to tell people how they're going to be destroyed, and our neighbors and our friends and they're all going to be destroyed and stuff? He said, unlike you, he said, you speak about the restoration of Jerusalem, you speak about the restoration of the house of Israel, you speak about the good news of Messiah coming to rescue all the nations and stuff. Isn't that good news? He said, it is. But look at them. These others, they just preach the bad news. You're the only one who preaches the good news, which was yet another recognition, really, when you think about it,
Yes.
that we preach the good news, and we preach the good news, yes, even though there are some bad episodes there in the good news, but nevertheless, the bad episodes are not because God hates you, Israelites. The episodes bad, they're there because God loves you.
That's right.
And
few people understand. So few people understand that the kingdom is the end result, the kingdom of heaven. That you couldn't find better news than that.
No, you couldn't find better news than that at all. And speaking of how, we have covered everything, but speaking of how Israelites have got lost all over the place, Gene and I came across. We were speaking about Asia the other day, and we came across the nation Japan. Now, friends, What do you know about Japan? You've got no idea. Why? Well, because my friend Margot Crossing, very recently, our friend Margot Crossing heard from Japanese scholars that Hebrews are involved in the foundation of their nation.
That's right.
No, this is not from common people. This is from Japanese scholars, so people who are learned, people who obviously studied things. And you may wonder why. Well, I know why, because I've got it back in 2015. I've written an article I found somewhere all those various information, so I just kind of composed them into an article in Serbian. If you don't mind, I'll just tell you what it is. For example, have you ever seen the royal regalia of Japan? The royal regalia is the flower, lotus. Now, lotus is a regalia, but lotus, interesting enough, it's the same lotus that you find. You can listen to this in the royal regalia of King Solomon.
Right.
Oh my, oh my. Who was King Solomon? He was descendant of King David. So he was the one who established David's throne, remember? And then from them, as the covenant with David would say, from Solomon on, there will be always a human king ruling on David's throne until the very return of the Messiah, who is going to, of course, establish that throne. And since Jesus Christ is the descendant of David in flesh, that means that really forever there'll be David's descendants on the throne of David. I mean, how logical. But anyway, lotus, just Google out lotus in the Japanese royal family. That lotus is exactly spittle image of the lotus of Solomon, my dear friends. Absolutely amazing. And then, the scholars might be right, those scholars of Japan, because in Genesis chapter 10, verse 2-5, there is a list of various nations. So you have the sons of Japheth, and there is a son called Yavan. I'm not sure how you pronounce it in English, but it's Javan. Yavan, anyway. There's also Mesech, Tiras, and then anyway, you have various names there. But in any case, the earliest even Chinese writers have described a nation whose name was the Three Han on the Chinese shore. Three Han. Han is most likely from Javan or Yavan, or Yahan. So there are three forefathers of that nation. And that nation basically occupied or inhabited the Japanese islands, and those three are Mahan, Shonhan, and Pienhan. And then there's a compilation called Nihon Shoki, which is the Chronicle of Japan, which basically was written in 720th year, And in that Chronicle of Japan, it says that the forefather of Japanese race had 4 sons, which is indeed, if you take a look at Genesis, it fits with the 4 sons of Japheth's son Yavan, as we can see in Genesis chapter 10, verse 2 to 5. Now, Yavan is exactly how Japan got its name, you see. It's not Yavan or Javan, but it's Japan. And also one of Yavan's ancestors, the Japanese Tsar Yemu Tenno, was also called Povori, which means the one who bends fire. Now, the one who bends fire, because that name Povori is also connected with the name of Javan's son Tarsis, who you find in Genesis, Tarsis, which means the one who does things, has a trade with fire. Anyway. And also there are other investigators who say the Japanese also descend from Gomer's son Ashkenaz or Ashkenaz and Togarma. And as you know, Gene, the most popular religion in Japan is Shinto religion.
Right.
And what is interesting with Shinto religion has no, as far as I know, it doesn't have anything written, any written sources. It was orally transmitted to, passed on from one generation to the other. And the most popular sacred place or temple of that religion is Ise. And in that sanctuary, you might say, there are mythological writings about the origin of Japanese. Now, Shinto religion also believes that the spirits, kami as they call them, that they fill the nature. Now, in that sacred place, in this sacred place Ise, there is a Japanese sacred mirror. It's a relic which nobody can see except a tsar who comes from God. And in that object, most likely we have a writing about the origin of Japanese. Now, some people who just managed to see that writing, that recording on that object, they say that the back of that mirror is made of bronze, and that the script is pretty much non-Japan style, and that it resembles the ancient Hebrew or Aramaic script. Yes. Would you believe that? And based on that, of course, now from that stand various theories that Japanese have some connection with the ancient Israelites who disappeared from the Holy Land after the Assyrians conquered them in 722. But nevertheless, the scientists have established similarities between ancient Hebrew and modern Japanese ceremonies in priestly garment, in the structure and position of the sacred places, as well as in religion, in language of ancient texts. And also there are 3 royal regalias that are also very similar. They are similar between ancient Hebrews and modern Japanese. They also say that the Japanese royal seal, so the seal of the Tsar, Japanese Tsar, that it resembles the lotus. Again, we come back to lotus. That was the symbol of King Solomon in ancient Israel. Isn't that amazing?
Yes, isn't it amazing just overall when you stand back and you look at all these things that we've been talking about, how Jehovah has absolutely fulfilled exactly what he said he would do.
Right.
You know, that's something that we all need to realize. That's
something that God never lies. Exactly.
That's right. He wasn't joking around when he said that he would spread us out to the 4 corners of the earth.
Right. Because when you look at
exactly what he did.
Right. When you look at Japan from the standpoint of Jerusalem, Japan is like the utmost end of the earth.
Exactly. And Australia and New Zealand and Northern Europe and North America. I mean, you know, in other words, he has taken us and cast us to the nations.
Right.
And I love the fact that in Amos 9:9 he says that he will bring us back, and when he does, he will not drop a single kernel.
Oh no. He knows all where you are, all Israelites. And if any of you have your hearts now jumping up and down for joy as you listen to us, there's a great opportunity that you are of Israel. And if those of you who are still not so happy about it, it doesn't matter. You're listening. And don't forget, all the nations will become Israelites. So one way or the other, we are all in the same, marching to the same destiny. No,
That's right. That's right. And Thomas says that he sees that Jehovah is no respecter of persons.
Of persons, exactly.
Which means if you and I have this hope and have this future that we can contemplate, that every human being has this same future they can contemplate if they choose to obey the creator of the universe.
Certainly. It's all your choice, friends. God is not going to make you do anything, but he'll kind of prod you a little bit and say, here, this is the way, go, you know, go this way. But he'll prod you, but he'll not force you.
That's right, exactly.
In many cases, it's your choice how your life is going to turn, for better or for worse. But again, among all of this knowledge that you have, and many of you I know many of Israelites are very educated and how can I say, standing out in their societies. It's the most important knowledge still you might be missing, the knowledge of who you are. You know.
That's right. Because if you don't know who you are, you don't know what your role is. You don't know what your responsibility is. You don't know why Jehovah made you.
Exactly.
And if you don't know that, then what hope have you? I mean, that's the thing, and I'm sure that you've had the same experience, brother. But as we have discovered all these things that we talk about, we have come to the realization of why we were made.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
Obviously, you know why you were made. You're doing it. You're fulfilling the role that Jehovah prepared you for. And I'm fulfilling the role that Jehovah prepared me for. And guess what? Every human being has a role that they were prepared for.
Oh,
and
yes.
the key is for that person to figure out where he or she fits in the kingdom, and then to start walking it out, to start fulfilling that role.
And that explains again why there is nothing racist, as some uninformed people would say. There's nothing racist in our name, Hope of Israel. We chose Hope of Israel because it's hope of all the nations and all the races, a hope of every human being, because we'll all be grafted into Israel, the whole nations.
That's exactly right.
That's the whole greatest mystery of the Bible. People never understand. Many people don't understand it, you know.
Yeah.
And if there is one mystery that is one phenomena so misunderstood, is the phenomenon of the church or the assembly. You know, people think church is like a steep building with a steep top, you know, with a cross on it and so on. No. In the Old Testament, you have kahal, the children of Israel, the congregation of Israel. In the New Testament, we have ecclesia, the people called out of this world, you know, called out for the glory and honor of God. And being called, you know, living a way of life, living a Torah way of life, living the way of life. It's a calling. Many people don't get it. You know, we remember how when Yeshua said, "You didn't look for me, you didn't choose me, I chose you."
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, people think they can just volunteer. Oh, they can just find a church of their own choice and they can just volunteer to be Christians. No, friends. No, friends, because what you volunteer to be for, inadvertently, actually the instruments of Satan. Because modern Christianity is nothing more than instruments of Satan. Sadly, I know this is shocking to all of you, but it is true, because they teach everything totally opposite to what the Messiah truly is, to what God is, totally opposite to what is the purpose of God and the plan of God for all of humankind. So that means that, you know, it cannot be the instrument of God, or at least not a true God. It can be only the instrument of the false God or false gods anyway. So yes, identity is important to know where we are, where we're going, what is our destiny, and what is our purpose. And every human being was created with a purpose.
That's right. Yes, that's right. You know, Mark Twain. Have you ever heard of Mark Twain? You know, the American author.
Yes, he's well known in Serbia.
You know, one of my very favorite quotes is one that he gave, and that is that the two most important days in a man's life are the day he is born and the day he finds out why.
Why? Exactly.
That is the
Exactly.
deal. When we figure that out, we
Yeah,
finally are coming to fulfillment, and we finally will start living the way we were supposed to live the day we were born.
precisely.
And that's
Precisely.
such a big deal. That's such a huge deal.
Right.
And once we get past playing the religion game and instead start living our lives the way we're supposed to live our lives, that's when we start to see the realization and the fullness of the life that was placed before us. And that is such a big
Absolutely.
deal.
It's a big deal indeed.
Yes,
Indeed.
yes,
And what
brother.
we're finding this true Bible history and true Bible, we find that the Israelites through Japan, and this statement that we heard from Japanese scholars that our friend Margaret Crossing conveyed to us, we find the Hebrews indeed fulfill the words of our God, because God doesn't lie. And
right.
you know what else they've discovered? Not only that the truth we have discovered, the scientists have discovered not only that the statement of these scholars of Japan are true, but that the scientists have found very big similarities again between the script or the signs that the Japanese use. Because as you may know, Chinese and Japanese languages are expressed in signs. It's a sign language, not really in characters like the rest of us have. And they've got some very, you wouldn't believe, both languages, both sign languages, both sign scripts have got some common symbols. Of course, they're pronounced differently, but they have the same meaning. For example, you have certain signs that show that those nations or that their ancestors were really well acquainted with certain happenings in Genesis. For example, we know from Genesis chapter 2 that God planted a garden of Eden toward the east, and he placed men there to keep up the garden, and he also gave all kinds of things. Now in that art, now the symbol of garden, Tien as they call it in Japan, are the 4 irrigation channel which are limited by earth, or 4 rivers with a tree in the middle.
Right.
Then also God, as you know, God in Genesis, God told Adam, he commanded Adam not to touch the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because in the day that he would eat that fruit, he would have brought death to his life. Now in Chinese and Japanese sign language, forbidding something, that something is forbidden, it's also expressed with the symbol of 2 trees. And command.
That's something.
Yeah, that's something. And then also we know that, of course, God first banned access to one tree of knowledge of the good of good and evil, and then later, when men, of course, took from that knowledge, nevertheless, God banned access to the other tree. We find it in Genesis chapter 3, and what Eve said to Satan: we eat the fruit of every tree in the garden, but of that one tree we will not eat fruit. Now the sign for fruit in Japan is a symbol of tree and the garden. And then we also know that Satan in Satan, of course, what he did, Satan actually not allowed, but he secured that people would get alienated from God, because he put some doubt in their minds that God is the eternal, that he is the one who created us, and that he, the creator of them, had hidden certain information from them, from the first humans. So how's the devil described in Japanese science? The devil, you have the devil described of combination of 3 signs: sign for secret, sign for a human, and the sign for the garden. That's a combination of 3 actually describes Satan. Also, we know that Eve fell for Satan's lies, and she had the desire to, of course, take use of the of the tree of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of evil, but God forbid or disallowed access to also the tree of life, so that humans would not desire to also, take that tree. So in this sign language of Japan, I'm looking here, desire. How is desire or wish described? It's a combination, desire and greed. It's a combination of symbol of woman and two trees.
Yes.
And then after,
More things change, the more they stay the same.
Right. And then for nakedness, as you know, as they fell for the for this tempting desire to take of the tree of good and evil, Adam and Eve they noticed all of a sudden that they're naked. That's in Genesis 3:7. Now the sign language for nakedness combines clothing, tree, and garden. So naked,
yes.
You have a symbolism of clothing, of clothes, plus tree, plus garden.
Yes.
What else?
So Gane-dan is everywhere.
Right.
I mean,
And then Adam and Eve, as you know, they had children, which when they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and they had, as Jesus Christ calls him, a righteous one, Abel. Now, righteous Abel would sacrifice to God sheep, and the sign language in Japan describes a righteous person and righteousness by combination of a sign for a sheep, hand, and spear.
Okay.
Right.
Amazing.
What else? Oh yes, we also have the in Matthew 23:35 that statement of Jesus Christ that from the blood of righteous Abel all the way to to now the sacrificing of lamb was the precursor, was the symbolism of the sacrifice of our Messiah, of our Passover sacrifice, through which we gain righteousness. So in Japanese sign language, you have combination of arm and spear, which means which is the symbolism for I and we. So you have righteousness. Righteousness is combination of a sign of a sheep, and then they have the pronoun for I and pronoun in plural and in singular. Pronoun for I and for we, believe it or not. So Abel and Noah, the Bible calls them righteous people. So I and we. So they would sacrifice to God clean animals such as sheep. You see.
Right.
So this is absolutely amazing. And here's another perhaps interesting thing. The accounts in both Japanese and Chinese tradition about the universal flood, they say in those tradition that there are only 8 people, 8 individuals who got saved, and we know that from the Old and the New Testament, of course. In the Old Testament, Genesis 7:1, and the First Peter chapter 3 verse 20. So the word chuan for a kind of boat that is in Japan. Chuan, it is also expressed with in this sign language like this. It's a combination of the sign for 8 plus a sign for mouth and plus a sign for vessel. So 8 vessel equals chuan, meaning the boat. And then, of course, Japanese tradition says that the first humans came to the world without land, because as you remember in Genesis 1:9, it says there was no land, and the land disappeared. And in the time of global flood, in Genesis 7:17 through 19, the land disappeared. And then there is a story of the Tower of Babel, which is also, believe it or not, found its way in Japanese sign language, because all the mouth used to speak one language, and then all of a sudden they began speaking different languages. So the word for tower in the Japanese sign language is also interesting. It's a combination of the symbolism for grass, plus symbol for clay, plus symbol for people, plus symbol for one, plus symbol for mouth. Now,
Wow.
why you might want the grass and clay? Well, the Babylonian tower was built of bricks made of grass and clay.
Right.
So that's
Wow.
why. So
Yes. Amazing.
just several hints that really corroborate the claim of Japanese scholars that the Hebrews did or were involved very heavily in the establishment
Yes.
of their nation. I think the lotus in the royal regalia of Japan is absolutely amazing. Find it out on the internet, just Google it out, and the lotus you find, that's exactly the lotus of Solomon, the symbol of Solomon. Absolutely amazing. So
Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
Well, brother,
so just some more science. Anyway,
I want to thank you for the 2 hours of your time that you've given me. I really appreciate that a lot.
anytime.
And
Hope of Israel will be proud to broadcast this numerous times.
I will piece it together and I will get it to you as soon as I can.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you again for this and for all that you do. And I just want to say one thing, and that's the same thing I say at the end of every one of these, and that is remember who you are.
Let your people come together in unity. What a blessing He's commanding when we're together, the oil flowing, descending from the heavens like the morning dew, pouring on our heads, precious oil from you, falling from the mountain, water fresh and cool, running down the beard, and we know it's true. How pleasant, how good, how beautiful it is. How pleasant, how good, how beautiful it is. Let your people come together, sing. He's commanding when we're together, the earth is flowing, descending from the